Welcome back, City Builders. CodiakTheKodiak here. Today, we're going to record this a little different. I don't have a ton of time to get the VO out for this video, and I want to make sure that you guys get this sometime in the next couple days. So, instead of doing our conventional talk about it beforehand, then talk about Cities Skylines 2, today we're just going to kind of go with the flow of the recording. Before we get started, I'm just going to ask that you guys maybe subscribe to the channel, drop a like, and maybe turn on notifications because I do updates for Cities Skylines 2 every Monday and Thursday whenever they drop a developer diary or dev insight. Or if you're watching this way later when Cities Skylines 2 is already out, I'm probably releasing Cities Skylines 2 content and maybe more of this. I don't know. Maybe we'll keep the series going. Who knows? Anyways, doing all that stuff really just helps the channel a ton, and I'd appreciate it a lot. So let's get into it. I'm first going to start in the background here. You can see that I am configuring B.o.B to actually fit with these buildings. If you notice right there, there's actually sub buildings in B.o.B. Didn't know that. B.o.B is a mod that allows you to make some customizations to different assets in the game. So things like roads or buildings, and you can remove certain things for them, like streetlights or parking spaces, for example. Now, not everything can be affected with it, but it's really useful for like changing things like trees around or removing parking spaces like I did on those buildings. And I wanted to make sure that we got rid of those parking spaces and changed around some of the trees in the map. Because if you guys remember in previous episodes, I was kind of a little troubled because a lot of the trees we had in the map were fall themed because I was using B.o.B on my Twitch stream, which you can find below. And I wanted to make sure that this build wasn't fall. I wanted it to be summer. I wanted it to be time and ready for people to come out and vacation to some of these towns that we're going to be building, especially closer to the mountains. So I wanted it to seem warm. I didn't want it to seem cold whatsoever. And thankfully, I figured out B.o.B actually has some settings inside of it where you can change some profiles around. So I was able to do that. And as you see throughout the build today, I will be changing around some of the trees to kind of fit better with the map because this map uses some really good high quality tree assets in the background. And I wanted to make sure that those were actively being used in some of these building assets rather than some of the vanilla alder trees. Now, you'll see me here doing a little bit of detailing around the school, and I did a little bit of changes around the shopping center. We basically leave the shopping center alone for today. I think maybe next episode or the episode after that will fully flesh out that side of town with the McMansions and the rest of the shopping center. You'll see me add, I think, a Wendy's at some point. If I didn't already add it, I don't think I already added it yet, but oh, there it is. So I put a Wendy's over here. A lot of shopping centers in small towns, especially near where I grew up, like had like at least one or two maybe fast food joints kind of in the plaza. So I wanted to make sure there was at least one there, or at least I kind of remembered to put one in. So even if we don't leave that Wendy's, I wanted to make sure it was at least there. So I did a lot more of the neighborhood expansion today. We added a lot more of these American historic homes. I'm not sure if I want the entire town to have this vibe to it, or if I want maybe like a different section of town to maybe have been developed during a different era. So like maybe transition into like bungalows or ranch homes and like kind of mix them up together. Because a lot of times you'll see that where like certain neighborhoods are all one construction type and then a different developer came in, or like different era, basically the town expanded and then they have like a different kind of style. So for example, ranch homes might be a really good expansion. And on my Twitch stream build, one of my towns was kind of developed in the 50s, so it only kind of has ranch style homes and nothing like old historic like these homes, because I want this town to kind of have like an old school vibe. I want it to kind of feel like it was maybe built and developed in like the early 1900s and have this kind of farmhouse, not colonial, but just historic American homes with it. And you'll see me go around and change some of the plant life through here. There was just some like plants that felt a little bit more tropical than I wanted, like these ferns, for example. I just didn't care for them. I didn't feel like they fit the vibe of the town. The rest of the build today, we're actually going to be building a lot of the commercial in the area. I wanted to make sure there was like kind of a good historic downtown, not like anything too crazy, but just enough to kind of give you the vibe and give you the energy I was kind of looking for in terms of how this town was kind of developed out. And right where those tree roads were that we just saw is where it's all going to kind of be at. But for the most part here, I just develop out these homes for the next little bit. And these are American historic homes made by Smiley's. Smiley's is one of my favorite asset creators on the workshop, so huge shout out to them. I'll have a link to their workshop down below, but they make some amazing buildings, especially for my small town builds. I just absolutely love them. And I'm basically just going through with Find It and using the randomize button to just randomize any of the American historic homes made by Smileys, and they just kind of fill up the town really well. And I leave some blank spots around where I want commercials to be developed, because I know that I want homes here, and I know that there might be some encroachment, I guess, from the commercial area into the residential. So I wanted to make sure there was an ample amount of space, so I didn't have to go back and destroy any homes that I, had already placed. So you'll see me expand out. These might change down the road. We might have like another little small commercial section up over here, because there is like one of the entrances to the town. Maybe some like small amounts of industrial right there, or like just some warehouses or something, or maybe even the different types of developments, like a McMansion development or a ranch style development or something else, maybe even bungalows, Sears homes. Sears homes, for those of you who don't know, were like kind of catalog homes. They were like you were basically sent magazines, but way back in the early days of America, and you could like pick out a like blueprint functionally of a home. And so like large swaths of the country that were developed around that time were basically mailed these magazines. They pick which style they wanted, and then they were shipped all of the stuff for their house to be built. And so those homes were called Sears homes, and there's lots of neighborhoods in the United States that look like that. They look like those Sears homes. But I growing up where I grew up in the northern part of Michigan, a lot of the homes like fit this American historic vibe, maybe a little bit less colonial than these are, but like they're the closest that I've found. So as you see on the screen now, we're starting to build the downtown, and I changed the roads around. I wanted to make sure there was ample street parking, even though there is normal parking on the roads that we're using. I wanted to make sure that there was like angled off-road parking. A lot of like at least touristy kind of downtowns in my neck of the woods had this, and so I really wanted to make sure that that vibe was kind of carried over into this build. And I really liked these two corner buildings right here. You can see that they both have like the rounded parts on them. I really liked that. I figured that the town could think that that's like its quaint historicness to its little downtown could be in some way related to those two like pillars, like on postcards or something like that. Also, the Stag Shop asset is one of my favorites. I think it's very funny. So anyways, I went through a lot of these Main Street assets. Now, these are all by Smileys as well, but there's going to be some other asset creators that are built in there. Again, I can't stress enough how much I really like Smileys assets. I think they work perfectly for my conventional small towns, and a lot of small towns in Michigan here look exactly like this, where you have these like 2 to 3 story buildings. They're probably the tallest buildings in town that aren't like the Walmart, right? Where they have multiple stories, and you're like, wow, does somebody live up there? But a lot of times these apartments are just like unused or abandoned, or just like, there's going to be a for rent sign up above some of these places for like decades, because nobody wants to put a business in the small town or in the downtown area, because the locals don't like to go to the downtown because it's where all the tourists go, right? Or like, they can't park their truck there, so why would I want to go downtown, right? And that's what ends up happening a lot of times. Or it's like the businesses are too expensive because it's the tourist area or whatever. But I try to put in an old historic theater with this Art Deco theater, because I think it's the only theater asset I have besides like the big AMC theater asset that I have. And it just didn't work how I wanted it to. The Art Deco style just didn't fit the era that I wanted for a theater. So I might have to shop around on the workshop to find a more, I guess dated, historic looking theater. And I'm sure there is one. I just didn't have one downloaded. So you'll see me throughout the episode kind of changing the zoning direction on some of these roads as well, just to make sure that they allow for these buildings to snap in, because all the ones I'm using, when I place them, they actually will snap like directly on top of one another. Because when you go to like any kind of small towns downtown, it doesn't matter anywhere in the US where you go, if you find these historic older buildings, they'll be like right on top of one another, and they'll kind of look different, and they'll be built different time periods or like different era, like this decade, and so I'll have like slightly different styles to them. So I do try to like keep them in the grid, because a lot of times the asset creators definitely build them with that in mind. So you'll see me kind of like mess around with how the grids actually function, because I like to rely on the grids. I know a lot of detailers will just like place it and then they'll move it in, but it just takes so much extra time, and I'd rather just like make sure that they're placed just like right in the grid, easy peasy. Everything can fit then. I don't have to finagle with anything. I tried to place a Burger King down. We're definitely gonna place a fast food asset somewhere. Also, I love this thrift store asset. I don't know who made it. I don't know if it's a Smileys asset or what, but one of my favorite assets is that Salvation Army downtown thrift store. I absolutely love it. But I definitely want to go back through eventually and put some more, fast food restaurants in. I don't feel like we have. I didn't place enough of them, I don't think. And you'll see me kind of expand out into more of like a more, not modern, but like maybe like 90s, early 2000s, like strip mall, or even like 80s and 70s, just like the like urban-esque downtown. You'll see me destroy this building on the right end at some point. I'm not a big fan of the garage doors. You don't see stuff like that in a lot of American small towns, but on the front side at least. But you'll see the development kind of change as we move away from this historic section of downtown into more commercial that was probably zoned next to it at some point. I'm trying to keep like some elements of realism in this, and then some elements of, as City Planner plays, not letting perfect be the enemy of good. Because it is a video game after all, and I'm not trying to make it like exact 100%, right? But I want it to like just have like the feel that it's real without it actually being 100% real, right? These corner lots right here, I had a pretty difficult time trying to figure out what I wanted to put here, because I didn't want to put the conventional historic homes that we had been placing. I wanted to put something maybe a little bit bigger, because I put them down and I realized that the conventional historic homes, a lot of times the commercial downtown will just blend into the neighborhood at the edge of it, right? There might be a couple trees and then boom, you're like right into the neighborhood. And I just didn't like how it was kind of coming together with this parking lot road, and I wanted to make sure there was angled parking on this street, so that way there was like ample amount of downtown parking for people, right? So I ended up going with these larger homes on the corner lots right here, and you'll see me shuffle through this next one because I did not want a pool in this town. And those of you who might like kind of look and know what I'm doing and building here might recognize that this is like a lake town. You know, we are kind of on the lake. The first episode we did build a beach, and I haven't done any kind of lake or shoreside development yet. And honestly, it's just because I don't do a lot of it, and so I need to do a little bit more of my own building research to kind of understand how I actively want to build some of those lakeside homes. So that's just something that will come down the road when I actually have like a little bit of time to dig into details of like how I want to actually do it. But as we build down through the town, because right now we're on the opposite side of the beach, as we begin to build towards the other side, you'll start to see like maybe more touristy like lake places kind of start to pop up as we get down further and away from the historical American builds. But as you'll see now, I'm building some alleyways in the backside of businesses, and I really like to do this in American small town builds because almost all of them will have this little back alleyway on the backside, at least where I grew up. Again, they'll have these like little back alleyways that'll usually be weaving throughout parking lots, and I don't think I put enough back parking lots, to be quite honest with you, but that's a little bit of element of realism that I was able to like look past. But you'll see me put that parking lot there, and a lot of times what'll happen is like the building on either the left or the right will buy the building to the left or right of it that might be a little run down, wasn't like as upkept as much, and they'll just put a parking lot there, so that way they have more parking for their business, so their customers feel more comfortable coming to their downtown location, right? Or the downtown might even purchase it, the city, to put a public parking lot in. So I put a couple of them down. This one is the bane of my existence because I put this one in, and then I realized that you'll see me go in with building spawn points, which is another reason why I like to use these alleys, because you can make the cargo trucks actually take the alleys, and then the pedestrians will actually take the front entrance, which is super cool. Big fan of that. But that one parking lot, they just will drive over the other parking spaces, and they won't use the back alley to enter, even with building spawn points. So not a big fan of that, but you'll see me kind of drag this one out. This is a little restaurant next to it, so I wanted to make sure that there was like ample parking for this restaurant right here. So you'll see me do these back lots, and this parking space, I actually really wanted to do covered parking. Being that the Salvation Army was there, I'm thinking about it now, I should have probably done something different for like the donation drop-off point, but I wanted to do angled parking, or not angled parking, I wanted to do like covered parking lots for this one because there's like a business next to it, and I was thinking that maybe there was some like, I don't know, some like apartments maybe up top, And, those people who have those apartments, maybe they're like, because those buildings right on the corner there might be a little bit more desirable. Maybe those ones were actually like some nicer apartments, because a lot of times the downtown apartments, at least in my hometown, were like kind of like not very nice. So maybe those ones were actually like a little nicer, because it's a quiet, small town. This isn't like a busy tourist town at night. These towns that these smaller towns like this that aren't like party towns, they get real quiet at night, and these could be like really nice like apartments for people who maybe live and work in the downtown, like younger professionals or something that are looking for more of that city living, but like live out in the country still. So you'll see me kind of fill in all of this with concrete, which is pretty typical of these back alleys locations. That big strip on the backside, you'll see me do later, but I'll try to place some homes in there, and I realize that it's like just too small of a lot, and then I end up just putting like a little tree border between that and the actual neighborhood itself, and I think it looked really good. One thing we haven't done a lot is city services other than the high school. So I wanted to put in a post office, and I was thinking about putting a historic post office in here, but I just didn't really feel like it fit. So I was kind of a little torn on that, because I really feel like this town maybe would have had a historic post office, but I just didn't have an asset on hand that fit in the town that wasn't like too big, because the real historic post office asset that I have is just way too big. So I ended up going with this post office, which was one of the I don't know who made this post office, but it's absolutely fantastic. And I ended up just going in with Bob and removing some of the stuff from it, like the parking and some of the hedges, so that way I could like really pull it close to the edge of the sidewalk here, so that way this back alley could, like, in theory, allow for postal vehicles to kind of drive in and out and use that side alley to kind of get in and out there. So and when building my downtown too, it's kind of just like a puzzle. Right? You're just kind of like building and placing buildings, especially those wall-to-wall ones, where you kind of figure where structures are going to be, and then sometimes you'll have a building like the one next to the post office has like stairwell down, and that's a perfect spot to kind of transition either into a parking lot or another building. Like, it just gives you an out to kind of change the type of development, and that's like a really handy tip if you're ever kind of building like one of these small towns, is look for assets like that give you a way to stop and break it up, because you're not going to get that full wall-to-wall on like most of the blocks. So as we can see here, I'm putting more hedges along this building here. And I just wanted to make it kind of feel like it was fully there. Like, I liked the hedges. I thought it added like a little bit of decor to it. So even though this town didn't have that historic post office, I still gave it one that I felt like warranted the niceness of being downtown, because this downtown is relatively nice. It's relatively quaint. This is a lake town, but like a lot of times lake towns will have their downtown not necessarily right next to the lake, or if they do, it'll be really lake themed. I don't have a lot of assets for that. So sometimes they'll just be like in a little bit. And since we have that dried up riverbed, I'd like to think that maybe part of the town kind of like has a little bit of flooding or something, like where they have like huge surge of rivers during some times of the year when they get lots of rain, and this is maybe like a dry year or something, and that's where these rivers kind of dry up at. So I wanted to put the downtown inland to kind of simulate the fact that, like, maybe there was some flooding issues. So like there's going to be certain parts of this town that are going to be undeveloped right next to that dry riverbed. So I wanted to put the downtown right here. It's kind of closer to the interstate, I guess, that comes through the state road. We haven't really kind of figured out what that's going to be yet, but as you can see here, I'm kind of wedging some homes kind of like into this downtown block. Again, this is not atypical at all. The downtowns will kind of blend in with the homes, and sometimes like these homes would be like kind of owned by the business owners that would have owned these businesses originally. Now, obviously, they probably don't own those lots anymore, and everything, like, as the town develops and grows and gets older, you'll see those like kind of get broken up. But a lot of times these homes will have like fences to like completely block themselves from the back alley. So I put this fence network, and I believe this is the mid-century modern fence network, which I think is on the workshop. So I put that in there just to kind of break up those homes, so they're not just like right in that back alley having to look at semis or whoever else is hanging out in the back alley. So and then you'll see me do a little bit of detailing here on these side lots as well, just to kind of like make it not feel like just grassy fields, which is totally common. But I just wanted, I don't know, there's sometimes there's like the elements of realism that you like want to recreate, and there's sometimes where you're like, no, I want this to feel nice because I kind of feel like I want to live here now. You know what I mean? Like, I don't ever want to like move back to like a super small town again. I like living in the city where I live. Like I grew up in a small town like this, and I moved to the city, and I realized I like city living a little bit better. But that doesn't mean that I don't like understand the joys and the serenity of living in like smaller, quaint towns like this, where you like know everybody who you live around, and it's so much more personal, right? And so there's some times where it's just like, wow, like I could totally see the appeal of this, and like you want to make it look a little nicer rather than realistic. So 'cause a lot of times these smaller towns, if they're not tourist heavy, they're a little bit poorer, because if they don't have the tourist traffic, you know, is there really a factory to support the town? Like, where else are they getting their income? Why are people moving in here? Like, what's the point of the town? And a lot of times it's a dying industry. Otherwise, the small towns, a lot of times they rely on tourism or farming. And if there's farming, you know, that town's usually a little bit more spaced out. So if a town's going to be really dense like this, it's got to have some kind of like tourism niceness to it. So you know, here we go. This is how we're developing it. So I'm just kind of going through, placing some trees down that have maybe been here a while, just to signify that this downtown has like been here a while. These trees are older, they're bigger, you know, they planned for this. So, and now you'll start to see me kind of start to expand out into this later development. So this is after that core downtown was built. They maybe bought up this land or decided to develop out this land into more, I guess, not run down businesses, but just, you'll see what I mean, and you'll look at them and you'll be like, yeah, that kind of style. So maybe if there's like a type of development name for like businesses like this, maybe you'll know or tell me. But like, I would like to think that maybe this part of town was developed in like the 60s through maybe even the 90s. You know, you have an old like drive up like roller skate kind of burger place, you know, and gas stations on the corner here. And I put 2 gas stations down on each corner, because you always see that. You always see competing gas stations kind of on the corners from one another. So we went this Shell gas station and this Mapco gas station. Is it Mapco? I don't know. We don't have that brand here, but we have Shell. So I like these assets a lot. I think they look a lot like gas stations that you would see in a town like this too, where they're a little nicer, but they're still just gas stations at the end of the day. And I wanted to extend the alleyway on the backside of these as well. Anywhere I have commercial on this main road, I want to make sure that there's that back alleyway for trucks to kind of get through, especially on businesses that actually have back doors where you can actually get the business through. And you'll see me struggle with this business here on the left, which is, I think, is a chicken place, on trying to get parking down. And that's something that sometimes can be like a little bit of a challenge when you start building this stuff out. And it's like a puzzle, as I said before, when you're building these towns, where you're just kind of like placing stuff down until it looks right. Like you just know it when you see it, right? And I looked at all this stuff and I'm like, yeah, this makes sense. You got this random like ice cream drive-through. You got this drive up burger place, you know, you got the gas stations on the corner, and then you got this chicken place, this random standalone chicken place. It just felt right, you know. And then like the random transmission shop on the corner, you know, my hometown, like we have a really nice downtown, but there's like just a random muffler man on one of the corners. It just looks so out of place. And so it just, I just placed everything together and it just kind of felt right. And so when you're building those puzzle pieces together, sometimes you feel like you're almost squeezing it in there, but in a way that can be super realistic, where like, yeah, this business does not have great parking, so you got to park and walk all the time, right? And that's how I kind of felt about this chicken place, was that, you know, I eventually kind of got it to where I felt like it fit kind of well, where it maybe was sharing parking with the ice cream place next door, and you kind of see me like wiggle it around now where it kind of makes sense. But there's those bollards there, and I'm like, those are parking spaces. They wanted parking there. Like, that's how this business is meant to be built. It's how the person who built this asset wants it. Or maybe if it's a real life building, that's what's really there. So, you know, I put the parking on both sides. There's a back you know, warehouse door, I guess, on the backside for this Colonel's Kitchen. I have no idea what this place is. But eventually it kind of like all works together here. But a lot of times, you know, small town businesses will have that, where it's like, well, you know, I really like to go to this bar, but you know, the parking there kind of sucks, and you got to walk all the way like around the corner. And like, to a small town person, like, you might be listening to what I'm saying and you'll be like, wow, dude, you can't even like walk a block. And it's like, yeah, in a small town, dude, people want to park close, you know. Otherwise they want to walk across a huge parking lot. That's totally normal. So not to say it's right, but that's just totally normal. So you'll see me kind of build out this transmission shop right here, Dunn's Transmission, I think. And then that chicken place I placed right there, I don't remember the name of it. We'll end up destroying that, and I'll put like an old gas station that maybe was run out of business by the other two like chain gas stations. Like maybe this was just like a local gas station at one point, and then it kind of it ran its course and went out of business, and it's for sale now, and nobody wants to buy it. So you'll see a for lease sign kind of go into it, and I just think it's realistic. I think it like fits the vibe of a small town where like, the big corporations come in and the small town businesses just can't keep up. The classic Amazon syndrome where they can lower their prices lower than you can afford to lower. Like they'll literally sell at a loss to run you out of business. So, and this is the asset I went with right here. So it's like this older 60s gas station. It kind of fit with the burger place next door and some of the other places around the area. I just felt like it fit with this little expansion of development. And if we are expanding into the 60s, like kind of development of downtown, I also kind of wanted to like maybe do some ranch style homes, which was another reason why I wanted to do some of the ranch style homes. So it took me a while to find a for sale asset. And I realized that it's actually like there's different ones when you place this. Like you got to place it until you get the right one. Thankfully, I got it in the second click. But there's that for lease sign, and I'm going to put that just kind of like on the front of the business right here. So that way, like when people come through. And apparently this building had parking, and I didn't realize it until I was filming the B-roll shots. So should always have checked for parking. But you'll see me place some like ruined and destroyed cars to kind of show that this is like not open. Like this is just like one of those weird abandoned buildings that like kind of exists in small towns that like nobody kind of like knows or like walks into, and then one day it just gets torn down and turned into like a Qdoba or like a Taco Bell out of nowhere, and you're like, oh, all right. And so but you just like you lose all the history that was in that building, which is kind of a shame. There's a building down the road from where I live in Grand Rapids. It's not down the road, it's pretty far away actually, but that kind of reminds me of this, that they ended up turning into like a clothing shop, like a local clothing boutique, which is pretty cool. I like it when you keep the old historic like history look of the building, but like you just put like some random business in there and just kind of embrace the vibe, really like own it, right? And I put those nice trees back there because I wanted it to kind of feel like this was all just kind of developed like 40 plus years ago. So these trees are mature, they're growing up, they're not like 100 years old trees or anything like that, but they're definitely older. So, and then you'll see me kind of here remembering that this is a lake town and there needs to be some tourism. So maybe we should put a motel because, when I think of my hometown, we just have like a random motel downtown that's kind of like not very nice, but it's there. And so I wanted to like kind of emulate that on this corner here because this is a lake town. And like maybe when they expanded this section of town, they put in a motel for people to come who are going to visit the lake and go fishing, right? Because who knows who's coming here. Like we haven't thought enough, I think, about why the town is the way it is. Sometimes I will, just kind of freely build and then I'll come up with ideas as I'm building. But then other towns, I come up with the idea of like why it's there, who made it, who it is, like what it is today, right? And I didn't do that with this town. So I'm just kind of like free building essentially. And so like as I'm building, I'm coming up with ideas and maybe I'll have to redevelop, maybe part of this will like redevelop. But I think this looks really good by the time we're done with it. And I think you guys will agree with me. But I ended up putting that motel right there in the corner, an older motel, maybe really cheap. Anyone who's like coming in for like a quick like vacation might stay at this motel. But that's kind of how I built that. And then I start to put in these homes on the backside of this alley here, which is, again, totally normal, totally something I remember seeing, growing up throughout any of the towns up north where I'm from. So, yeah, I kind of like how the alleys both kind of like curve in at the same way, too. They both kind of like symbolize that this is the end of the commercial zoning for this part of town. And we might expand this out just a little bit or change one of the sides just to add like a fast food restaurant somewhere. I think maybe next to the Mapco. I'm probably gonna change that so that way there is an actual or not back alley, but like an actual fast food restaurant kind of like in right there, because I feel like, we just have the Wendy's on the other side of the road. There would definitely be a fast food place close to downtown. Like I know there's a Subway and like maybe a Panera in downtown, I think, built into one of those assets, but like there would definitely be some kind of standalone fast food place in this part of town. And I feel like a McDonald's would make sense, but I like to think that like McDonald's would be in like maybe like a bigger town, but then again, there's a town near where I grew up called Mansalona, and they're a super small town and they have a McDonald's. So, you know, maybe we will end up putting a McDonald's in there. I got to look at the McDonald's assets that I have, but you'll see me kind of place these trees on the backside, just kind of like fill in and like kind of create some kind of park-esque separation between the historic nice homes and the actual downtown. Again, maybe these homes are all like rental vacation homes for people, or maybe they live there year round. I don't know, but I want to make sure that like these historic homes, at least like over here closer to the downtown or closer to any kind of lake access, feel like maybe not higher class is the right word, but like higher end. Like they feel like, you know, it's a place where you could and want to vacation. I was really annoyed by how many tree branches were like sticking into the buildings here, and you'll see me kind of like resize them. But I feel like putting the trees on the side of that business really kind of helped pull it all together too. So, but yeah, it's a shame that I didn't really feel like the homes, I guess, fit in on the backside of these alleys, because you would see a lot of that where like homes wedged in there. But I just didn't really feel like the 2x homes, which Smiley's, I don't think Smiley's had any homes that kind of fit this vibe that were in that size constraint, and so they just kind of looked out of place. Because, you know, when you grab from different asset creators, they always kind of have like different textures and different brightnesses of their buildings, and I just didn't really feel like anything fit with what I had in that size constraint. But I ended up putting a fence next to this business, and I don't like to get too detailed into building like specific homes, because I feel like it's like a little, I don't know, time wasteful. But like there's some stuff where it's like I can't let this go like by itself, because if this is a nice house right here next to this gas station, they're not just gonna have like an open border with the gas station. They're gonna put a fence in. They're gonna put some kind of like border, whether it be trees or something else. They're gonna put something to separate themselves from that gas station. So I wanted to make sure I at least put this fence in to kind of separate them, to like maintain that level of, I don't know if niceness is the right word, but that level of like niceness, I guess. So we put that fence in, connected it straight up to the tree there, so that way it kind of like wraps around and creates that separation from that house. But you know, a lot of homes, like I feel like there would be like a lot more of these homes that would have fences between them, but it is just so tedious, and I just don't feel like doing it. But if you want to make your own small town, like it would be pretty realistic to just pick a couple homes every block that would just have a fenced in yard. And sometimes, like if they're on the corner, they might not have a fenced in yard, but you know, you just look at any city really, even at that point, like even the small towns, the cities, chain link fences, you'll see a lot more in small towns than you will actual fenced properties, like with picket fences or wooden fences. So now I'm going through with realistic population mod, and I do like to make sure that they maybe have like somewhat of a realistic amount of people working in them. So that way the town like kind of develops realistically, right? Where it's like I build a bunch of homes and then I can look and see like, do they have enough workers? And as long as they have enough workers, I think we're good. It's always okay to have a bit more housing than available, because a lot of times like smaller towns end up becoming retirement areas for older people, right? Like my hometown, for example. I mean, a lot of young people end up moving out of town and then they retire, and then there's, you know, just a lot of retirement folks that live in towns like this. So it's always okay to have more, but it's not really okay to have less, because then these businesses would not be in business, right? Or you know, maybe it's not as touristy as you make it seem. So I put in these angled parking. I think the angled parking looked pretty good. I definitely could have done parallel parking, but I definitely feel like the angled parking is one of those things where it's like, it's not necessarily, yeah, you'll see me changing the building spawn point. The cars don't listen to it. But you know, I feel like the angled parking looks a little better than the actual parallel parking, because it fits the vibe, I guess, more of what a small town that is maybe a little bit more picturesque and touristy kind of has to offer. But that's the end of today's video. I know this one was a lot different. I didn't discuss Cities Skylines 2 at all, but I wanted to get this video out to you guys. I'm hoping that I'm uploading this on Sunday. If not, I'm uploading this on a Tuesday. Again, aiming for Sunday if this is when this is going out, but it might be a little bit later in the day. So thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. If you guys enjoyed this format better than the not talking about it while everything's happening, then let me know. And if you don't like the format and you want me to stick to these builds, like kind of discussing new topics on Cities Skylines 2, help me get some ideas. I'd love some more ideas, concepts. I eventually do want to do one still where we talk about the connection between Life by You and maybe Cities Skylines. But if you don't like this, just let me know down in the comments. All right, thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it, and I hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Deuces.